Pond Hockey Eagles post-game show. We hope everybody's staying up with us in this late evening as the Eagles go to 6-0 and win 26-17. Another dominant second quarter. They slacked in the third quarter a little bit, let the Cowboys back in the game. But, again, when this team needs to do something, they do it. They got the drive that puts them up 26-17. Very questionable that they would go for two there. We can talk about that in a little bit. But right now, let's bring in the man who covered the game down at Lincoln Financial Field on an exciting Sunday night, exciting sports time in Philadelphia. John McMullen joins us. Hello, John. They're 6-0. How you feel about that?
Yeah, 6-0. Who didn't have them at 6-0? I think we all did at the bye. Yeah, this has been the best team in football. I mean, you can argue if you're Buffalo, but bottom line, 32 teams in this league, guys. There's one unbeaten. And the Eagles keep, I don't want to say they dominated the first half of this game. They had a little bit of a lull that Nick Sirianni talked about. But, man, this theme of these long fourth quarter clock draining drives, they're pretty impressive. When they need to run the ball, everybody in the building knows they want to run the ball. And this is one of the best defenses in the NFL, and they couldn't do anything about it.
Hey John, I said a little while ago, the one thing that this team does better than anybody else in the league, and one of the most important reasons why they are the last undefeated team left in the National Football League, is because of their ability to adjust and overcome adversity better than anybody else has done it. It's not always perfect the way this team goes about their business, but they get the end result that they want.
No, you're right, D-Gun. And, you know, one of the things I've really liked about Nick Sirianni is sort of this mentality. And I saw it Thursday night, the Thursday night game, which everybody probably didn't watch because it was such an ugly game. But you saw Chicago. And in my opinion, they're doing a disservice with Justin Fields and trying to make him, you know, they hired Green Bay's quarterbacks coach and they want to drop him into an offense that Aaron Rodgers has run for years. I think it's a disservice for that kid. So I look at what Nick Sirianni and Shane Steichen, Kevin Patullo, Brian Johnson have done with Jalen Hurts. During the entire offseason, they paid lip service to what Howie Roseman and Jeffrey Lurie want, this high-powered passing offense. And then when they get to the regular season, they do whatever it takes to win a football game. And if that's throwing the ball, like it was against Minnesota earlier, when they're playing all that zone, they throw it. If that means running the football, if that means running the quarterback, they run it, they run the quarterback. They do what they need to do to win a particular football game. And even though that seems like common sense, it's not common in the NFL.
John, you know, I want to talk to you about how this team, their mindset moving forward. Because, you know, the more and more games that you win when you're undefeated and you're the only team that's left in the NFL that's undefeated, you know, the talk gets louder and louder. The chatter gets broader and broader, not only from a local standpoint based upon the fans and the media in Philadelphia, but then you start to get the outside noise about how good this team is. How do they keep it together? I know it starts at the top with Nick Sirianni and the message that he sends, but it's still somewhat of a challenge when you start to think about some of the young guys if they buy into the outside chatter that goes on.
Yeah, I mean, I think it helps with the quarterback and Jalen Hurts. He's 24 years old, and he shouldn't be this mature, but he is this mature. I've talked to him after every game, after every win. I've talked to him after every loss he's had in his career. He's the same guy. And it's pretty impressive. I give Nick Saban a lot of credit. I think it stems from his time at Alabama. I think that's where he was taught sort of don't get too high, don't get too low. But, I mean, he constantly talks about the standard. And I've asked him, what is the standard? You're 6-0. How high can the standard be? And, you know, in Arizona, he talked about, well, they didn't punch it in. and he gave him a chance to come down and tie the game, and he wasn't happy with that. Today, it was 20-0, and they let the Cowboys back in the game. There was that lull until they had the big long drive. So he's never happy, and I think it's pretty impressive for somebody that young. I always say he's got an old soul. He's mature. I know 35-year-olds, 40-year-old people aren't as mature as Jalen Hurts. It's pretty impressive.
I tell you what, John, I think that the standard is a mirage in some ways, because in such an imperfect game, the standard is perfection. It has to be.
Yeah.
I mean, what other standard can there be? And given the type of game that football is, you never achieve perfection. I've been involved in games where, the game was over and I thought I played terrible. And then I go in and I watch the film the next day and be like, wow, it wasn't all that bad. And then there are games where I thought that I played really well, and I go in, I watch the film, and it's like, man, you just stunk it up today, So
Yeah.
if the standard is perfection, and you set the standard up here and you're always chasing it, then you're always requiring your best from week to week, and realizing that, hey, I might not be able to get there, but if that's the standard and that's what we're chasing, then guess what? We shoot for the moon, and if we miss, we'll always be amongst the stars.
Yeah, and I think you're right with Jalen, and you hit the nail on the head, Seth. It's not attainable. So you're always chasing something, because you can't play a perfect game. You can't. It's just not possible. But it's kind of, you can understand when one or two or three or even 4 or 5 players are chasing that. To get most of the players on the same page is the impressive part. And I think that's the leadership. And it's not only Jalen Hurts, it's Nick Sirianni, it's Jason Kelsey, it's players like that that have gotten these guys to buy in, and they bought in. And winning helps as well, let's be honest. I mean, you're seeing the results. You're 6-0. You just beat your biggest rival, even though they downplay that part of it. It's a big win, especially because the Cowboys have dominated the Eagles in recent years. So this was a big step forward for this team. I thought they were the better team. They proved they were the better team. I think they're better than the Cowboys if the Cowboys have Dak Prescott. And I think they're starting to believe in themselves. And, we're talking about the bye week, and, maybe the Phillies helped them, because for the first time in, recent memory, the Eagles are 6-0. Imagine the Eagles are 6-0, and they're not going to be the story. The Phillies are going to be the story. So they can kind of skate by the bye.
Yeah, it is pretty amazing. John, let's stay with Hurts for a second, because you look at his numbers, and they were fairly pedestrian. But on that drive where they go ahead 26-17, he made some plays that I think we need to take another look at. The quarterback draw that converts the 3rd down and 4, where he saw the blitz back off, and he's got the quarterback draw for the 1st down. An RPO he give to Gainwell that he read well, and that got the 1st down. He got the quarterback sneak for the 1st down, and then boom, boom with the quick short passes to get him in the touchdown, just like clockwork.
Yeah, and I think the RPO part of it, Mike, is that +1 in the running game. Kind of what I talked about. That's what Chicago should be doing with Justin Fields, but they don't. And they leave him to his own devices. Look, Nick Sirianni would probably prefer, Phillip Rivers. He loves Phillip Rivers, right? A guy who knows the entire offense, probably a little bit younger. You can throw the football all over the place, but he doesn't have that. So he takes advantage of what he has. And I think it's a tremendous coaching job. And Jalen Hurts makes it really, really difficult for opposing defenses, because, that's a really good defense. I think Micah Parsons is, if he's not the best defensive player in football, he's number 2 to Aaron Donald. DeMarcus Lawrence, we know Trevon Diggs has been an Eagles killer. It's a really good defense, and they knew they were coming out. They knew they wanted to run the ball in the fourth quarter, and they couldn't stop them. They could not stop them. And part of that, and a bigger part of that than Miles Sanders or Kenny Gainwell or Boston Scott, is Jalen Hurts, because people are just concerned about his ability to keep the football, and that makes things easier for the backs.
Hey, John, what did Nick Sirianni have to say about his reasoning behind going for the 2-point conversion there, when we're thinking, man, just kick the extra point?
Yeah, one of the things about Nick, I mean, there is this new age approach, and I think you saw it on the first Eagles scoring drive when they went for it on 2 4 downs. I'm like, I think the first was one was 4th and 3, and one was 4th and 4. I think the 4th and 4 was from the 10-yard line. They never ran it because the Cowboys jumped off sides. I'm like, wow, just take the field goal at that point. But they put such pressure on the defense to make them play 4 full plays. Think about it. I mean, 10 yards, do the math. I mean, it doesn't take much to get a first down if you want to utilize all 4 plays. And he puts this incredible pressure. So a lot of it is good, the new age analytics. A lot of it is bad. I know Miami was down 2 touchdowns. They scored. They tried to go for 2. That's what they tell you to do. It gives you a better chance, blah, blah, blah. I'm with you, D-Gun. But that's just the way the league is going.
Let me ask you a question about what your reaction was when you saw the Dallas Cowboys botch that situation when it looked like CeeDee Lamb had the first down, and all of a sudden he didn't have the first down, and then they rushed some stupid play in there. I mean, how does that happen in an NFL sideline where they're so clueless to just throw that series away?
Well, things happen fast. I thought they had the first down as well, because the officials seemed to put his foot down past the first down marker. You guys probably saw better on TV than I did. It looked like he might have had the first down. But, yeah, I mean, either challenge the play or if you have to call timeout, call timeout. I mean, the last thing you want to do is rush something in that situation. But things happen so quickly in an NFL game. I don't think people realize that clock is moving, the play clock. You got to get up there. You can't hesitate at all. And look, they made a mistake. The Eagles took advantage of it. Should have had a first down. It was, they were desperate at that point. But first of all, just punt the ball. If it comes down to that, just punt the ball. Yeah, but they were desperate to get back in the game.
They botched it 3 different ways. They didn't call timeout to settle it down. They didn't challenge it to settle it down. And then less than a yard, they don't run it. And they run a stupid rollout pass. So
with Cooper Rush as well. And, Cooper Rush turned into Cooper Rush. He had a Cinderella, especially in that first half. I think his passer rating was 1. I mean, the Eagles were swarming in the secondary. They had the 2 interceptions in the first half. And that's another thing we should talk about. This team came in first in the NFL in turnover ratio. Dallas was number 2. They end up +3. So, they're so far ahead of everybody else when it comes to turnover ratio. And part of it is the defense taking the football away, but part of it is Jalen Hurts and the offense taking care of the football. So I don't know if that can continue the way it has, but if they keep winning that turnover battle the way they are, they're not going to lose a lot of games. I'll tell you that.
Well, John, I just wanted to talk about the defense. To your point, I get the sense that as long as they can apply pressure, that they're going to continue to be able to turn the football over. Because I think that's the one element that allows you to force turnovers. Turnovers just doesn't happen because the quarterback decides to throw an interception or a running back decides to fumble a ball. It happens because they're forced into doing it. Whether we're talking blitzing, and that's not something that Jonathan Gannon did at all tonight, I don't think. In 5-man, they got some pressure because I think they felt like they had the matchups. But I think just as long as they can continue to apply the pressure, that they're going to continue to get, turnovers. My question to you is, when I looked at the defensive backs tonight, they didn't look like they were playing 7 to 10 yards off the ball. They looked like they were up challenging wide receivers at the line of scrimmage and in that intermediate area to make those throws a lot more difficult for Cooper Rush. And when the pressure did get there, he was throwing those balls under duress, even though the Eagles didn't have one sack tonight. They had a bunch of pressures, but he threw 3 interceptions tonight, and they didn't sack the quarterback one time.
Yeah, and I think, the second C.J. Gardner-Johnson interception, Brandon Graham just drilled Cooper Rush. I mean, I think he threw it to C.D. Lamb. I think it was C.D. He was open.
Yeah.
I mean, but he couldn't get the football out there.
Yeah.
Because Brandon just leveled him. So, yeah, I mean, pressure's a big part of it, as you know, Seth. And the fact that they're able to turn the football over at this rate. Sometimes I argue with Jody Mack about this all the time, and I go back to Chris Long in the NFC Championship game in 2017. Sometimes pressure can even be better than getting the sack. Getting the sack is never bad. It's never a bad thing. But, if you hit the quarterback's arm, it turns into an interception, turns into a pick six. It can turn even to something better. So pressure is a big part of things as well. And that last interception proves that, as it always does. But this group as a whole has gotten a lot of, as Hassan Reddick, he had been getting the sacks recently until tonight. But those pressures have been there. And you talked about the first 2 games, and everybody was saying, why does Hassan Reddick have no sacks? And Nick Sirianni, soothsayer, said, wait, they're coming. He's been getting pressures, and all of a sudden, here they come. They come in bunches. But as long as they're getting that pressure, as long as they're turning the football over, I tell you guys all the time, this coaching staff talks about 2 statistics, turnover ratio and explosive plays. And if you win those 2, you're going to win the game. So far, every time they've won it, not only this year, but in years prior, that's the case. You win those 2 categories, you're going to win the game.
Hey, John, can you give us any update on the severity of Lane Johnson's concussion and Landon Dickerson's injury?
Well, Landon's been dealing with that for a while, so that's going to be something, the bye week will help. But obviously, going back to last week in Arizona, Suo Pet actually played more than Landon Dickerson, so he had been in and out. Same thing happened today. Landon had to leave. With Lane, he does have a concussion. Jason Kelsey, we talked to him. He talked to Lane after the game. He's feeling okay. It's a good time, never a good time, but it is the bye week, so you do have that extra time. And, when we talk about that lull, D-Gun, a big part of that was Lane Johnson. As soon as Lane left the game, and really it was 1 play, 2 plays in the first half, but at the beginning of the third quarter, Micah Parsons was killing Jack Driscoll.
Yep.
I mean, killing. So, Jack has done a tremendous job. Sue has done a tremendous job, but there's a drop-off from Lane Johnson and Landon Dickerson, and you need those guys healthy, especially Lane, and I think he'll be back after the bye.
Hey, John, just for the record, I was never one of those guys, that felt like, the almost pressure, the hurry, was important. If I wasn't getting the sack, I didn't want the hurry.
Well, no, I know you, Seth. I know you want the sack. And like I said, a sack is never a bad thing. But you saw an example tonight, Brandon Graham, the hurry, that caused that interception.
No doubt about it.
And that's a big play.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
John, always a pleasure. Thanks for all the information. And, rest up for a week, and then we'll get back to you. We're trying to figure out when this team could actually lose, and I don't know if you
after the bye.
So they're not going to lose next week. I get it, but when you look at the schedule, I mean, are we getting too crazy to think that there isn't a team that really can match up with them at this point?
Well, now coming out of the bye, I mean, the Eagles, they never want to think ahead, blah, blah, blah. But, yeah, we can. And you got Pittsburgh coming out of the bye. They had to go back to Mitchell Trubisky. That's not a good football team. Then you have Houston. That's one of the worst rosters in the NFL. Then you have Washington, and Carson Wentz probably not even going to be able to play. It might be Taylor Heineke. I mean, yeah, I don't know how they can lose to those three teams. I'll tell you that right now.
I will say this. I believe that they are the best team in the NFC, but I also believe that the games are going to get more and more difficult as they go along, not just because they're undefeated, but because the more and more game film I think that you have to begin to dissect who and what the Eagles are in every phase of the game, the more proficient you can become, at devising a game plan to take away what they do best. So the bye, in my opinion, actually comes at a good time because now the coaching staff has this next week when they give the players a week off to go back and self-scout and look at what they've done and try to figure out, okay, how do we break some keys along the way of some things that we've had success with, but we still have it in our arsenal, but how do we develop 2 or 3 plays off of that same look that allows that look to remain, as dominant as it's been? Because trust me, when you're sitting on the mountaintop, everybody's trying to knock you off, and the good defensive coordinators and the good offensive coordinators, they stay up all night trying to figure out a way. They're looking at every little bit of film that they can find to try to figure out where there's some things that they can take advantage of.
Yeah, I mean, the bigger the reputation, you're going to get everybody's best punch. Everybody is going to be looking at this team, and there's a lot of these poor teams saying, hey, this is going to be our Super Bowl to knock off the only undefeated team in the NFL. So, yeah, they're going to get everybody's best punch. But the good thing is they got Arizona's best punch. Arizona played poorly again this week, but they persevered. Dallas, they got a bit of a break. No Dak Prescott. I know Cooper Rush. And, I joked there was only one undefeated team coming into tonight's game, but there were 2 undefeated quarterbacks because Cooper Rush had never lost as a starting quarterback. That's over. They're handling their business, and that's all you can do.
He's John McMullen. He covers the Eagles for JAKIB Sports. John, thanks very much. This show is going deep into the night, and we're back because we got all kinds of. We have the 2-minute drill. We're going to come back. Some quick flash subjects. We have our drive of the game, and we have game balls. So we'll be here till 4 a.m. If you want to hang out.
You'll be here by yourself.
I was about to say, you'll be here.
It's the Pond Lehocky Eagles post-game show. I'm Mike Miss. That's Derek Gunn and Seth Joyner. Devin Caney will join us again, and we're back after this.
My wife was in an accident that changed our lives forever. She was in rehabilitation for years. She had to learn to walk again. She couldn't take care of herself. We couldn't afford a nurse. We were running out of options. One conversation with Pond Lehocky changed everything. They understood what we were going through and immediately helped us navigate the legal process. We can't thank them enough.
Pond Lehocky. Tell us your story.